The chamber smelled of ozone and polished stone, a sharpness that made the human's senses flare instinctively. Mara Vance stood in the center, boots planted, coat falling around her like shadows against the bright lights above. She did not flinch as the assembly of alien delegates leaned forward, their multifaceted eyes tracking her every move. She could feel the collective calculation in the room, the predator analysis of species that had dominated whole star systems. High Admiral Arthale of the Vrax Dominion was the loudest. His mandibles clicked, each movement deliberate, a display of amusement, or what they passed for it. "A human," he growled, voice amplified by the chamber's resonators. "Alone. Unarmored. Why are you here?" Mara tilted her head slightly, as if considering whether his question was worth answering. "I didn't come to ask," she said simply. The room erupted in laughter. It wasn't polite, it wasn't cautious. It was full-throated and dismissive, the sound ricocheting off the walls like a weapon. Arthale advanced, each step shaking the floor beneath him. "Then you came to die?" he sneered. "You call yourselves Deathworlders. Show me then. Show me what a Deathworlder can do." Mara's hand brushed the back of her coat. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled a blade from beneath the fabric, a single-edged, matte black knife that seemed to swallow light. It was narrow, elegant, and terrifying in its simplicity. The delegates laughed again. A knife. Against them. Against a species that had no fear of death, no hesitation in war. "You bring a toy to a war council," Arthale hissed, leaning closer. "Do you think it will protect you?" Mara took a step forward, blade steady. "It won't protect me. It will protect you from ignorance." There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence in the chamber, before the first of them realized the intent behind her calm. Arthale lunged, massive clawed hands aiming to crush the human. Mara stepped inside the swing, precise and unhurried. The knife slid between gaps in his armor, between mechanics and flesh, into the soft tissue at the base of his skull. The mandible spasmed once, twice, then froze. He collapsed. The sound of his fall echoed across the chamber, reverberating against the walls like thunder striking glass. The delegates were silent now, their amusement replaced by calculating shock. Mara stood over the corpse, letting her blade drip. "He won't be speaking again," she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried weight that pressed against every corner of the chamber. "So I'll finish the demonstration." From the edges of the room, armed guards surged forward. Plasma rifles hummed, energy barriers flickered into place, but Mara did not move to defend herself. She sheathed the blade slowly, deliberately, letting the delay twist the stomachs of every spectator. "This wasn't an assassination," she said, voice carrying clearly. "It was a lesson." The chamber remained tense. Some delegates tightened their grips on weapons, unsure whether the human was bluffing or merely confident. Mara lifted her hand and a holographic projection flickered to life behind her. Star charts. Shipyards. Command hubs. Strategic supply depots. Each location marked with a flashing red icon. "You call yourselves rulers of the galaxy," she said. "Yet here you sit, oblivious to the destruction already delivered." One of the younger species, whose face was a shifting pattern of luminescent scales, spoke first. "You attacked us?" Mara shook her head. "No. We dismantled your empire quietly, piece by piece, long before you even laughed at me." She tapped the projection. Footage appeared. Humans in zero-gravity boarding enemy dreadnoughts, Marines moving through corridors like phantoms, knives and firearms cutting a swath through ranks of soldiers. Ships exploded silently in orbit, debris raining down on Vrax fortresses like meteor showers. "You broadcast our colony's destruction," she said softly. "Children, civilians. You called it a warning." Her gaze swept across the room, meeting every alien leader in turn. "We listened. And we prepared." Gasps and murmurs spread. Arthale's counselors exchanged nervous glances. One of the elders, centuries old and notoriously cautious, leaned forward. "This coordination, this planning. You have been preparing for decades. Mara smiled faintly. No, she said. We prepared for history. Her tone darkened. You do not understand how fragile an empire built on fear truly is. You think your fleets and walls protect you. They only delay the inevitable when humans decide to act. The chamber vibrated with tension. Alien stepped back, unconsciously granting her space. Her calm authority became a weapon of its own. K'Arthael's voice, when it emerged, was weak. You speak of war? Yes, Mara said, letting the word linger. Total war. But not as you imagine. Not with fireworks or honor. We strike with precision. With intent. We end things before they start. A junior officer, trembling, asked. Why spare us here? Mara's eyes swept the assembly. Because I want the galaxy to remember the choice they had. Laughter in my presence was their final error. She sheathed the blade entirely now, her movement fluid, deliberate. And let me be clear. We did not come to negotiate. We came to teach. Empires crumble when they underestimate us. That is a universal truth. The holographic displays shifted, revealing rebellions sparked by human interference. Slave species armed and trained, fleets intercepted and dismantled quietly in the void. We fight to end things efficiently, she added. Not because we enjoy destruction, but because mercy is weakness you have never comprehended. K'Arthael's massive form twitched. Some of his generals whispered among themselves, trying to reconcile centuries of conquest with the precision carnage unfolding before them. They had underestimated humanity, and it showed in every tense line of their armor, every twitching mandible. Mara took a step back, eyes scanning the assembly. Consider this your first warning, she said softly. Laugh at a Deathworlder at your peril. The room was silent. No one moved. For the first time in centuries, the galactic concord had experienced uncertainty. And Mara Vance, human, Deathworlder, stood at the center of it, blade-sheathed, calm, and utterly unstoppable. The galaxy didn't wait. Humans never waited. By the time K'Arthael's body cooled in the high assembly chamber, fleets across Vrax space were already reacting to invisible orders. Mara didn't need to issue commands in person. She had left pieces of her mind in every system, embedded in human networks, human cells, human agents trained in the art of quiet, precise destruction. 3 hours after the Council's laughter, the first fleets began to vanish. Vrax strike cruisers blinked out of existence in the black, their engines shredded, weapons systems disabled by saboteurs who had boarded silently days before. In a dozen worlds, humans moved like shadows, cutting through the armor of complacency. Mara watched the reports arrive in her personal terminal, each more brutal than the last. Ships drifting lifeless through space. Commanders missing. Supply lines severed. And still, no human had fired a weapon in the traditional sense. This was strategy honed to perfection, economy of action, precision of terror. She didn't smile. She never did. Her satisfaction was quiet, internal, a predator's calm after a hunt. A subcom officer, young and eager, reported nervously. Commander Vance, we've intercepted communication from Vrax High Command. They're scrambling fleet responses, but they're already too late. Good, Mara said. Her voice was cold, almost clinical. We don't chase them. We make sure they can't chase anyone ever again. The officer hesitated. With all due respect, they might try counterattacks. They have overwhelming numbers. Numbers are meaningless if they're blind, Mara cut in. If they cannot see the threat until it's inside their hulls, numbers become irrelevant. That is why we win. Her hand hovered over the terminal's projection. Star systems lit up like embers, one by one, each mark of Vrax's world where humans had quietly embedded themselves. She could feel the pulse of coordinated action, the rhythm of a galactic symphony only she conducted. They underestimate humans, she said softly, almost to herself. They always do. The first Vrax fleet engaged human forces over the Syndrel sector. Mara observed from orbit, not commanding directly, but guiding via projection, her soldiers already inside the enemy vessels, disabling life support, rerouting power, cutting communications. There was chaos, screams, and panic, but not a single human casualty. Precision, patience, efficiency. One officer asked, "Commander, why leave any alive?" "Because fear teaches faster than death," she said. "They need to remember what it means to underestimate us. Every survivor will carry that memory, and it will spread faster than their fleets can repair." The battle reports arrived in staggered waves. 2 capital ships boarded and incapacitated without weapons fired. Several dreadnoughts drifting lifelessly near asteroid belts. Supply convoys evaporating as humans turned enemy crews against each other before disappearing. Mara's eyes, sharp and cold, scanned each report. She noticed a pattern. Vrak's intelligence was decentralized, but predictable. Their arrogance blinded them to the subtle, methodical strikes humans were capable of. Where they relied on brute strength, humans relied on unpredictability. Then came the first direct communication from surviving Vrak's leadership. The transmission was fractured, urgent, panicked. Krrthal's second in command, a sleek predator named Vithrael, spoke. "Human Vance, your fleets, how?" "Logic," Mara replied smoothly. "Planning. Execution. You should have laughed less." The transmission cut out midword, replaced by a feed of human strike teams infiltrating orbital stations, disabling weapons, and leaving strategic messages for the remaining Vrak's forces. A simple image of Mara's blade, hovering over a map of their territories. No threat. Just inevitability. She leaned back in her chair, the faint hum of the ship's systems echoing in the quiet cabin. Outside, the stars continued their indifferent dance. Somewhere in the void, enemy fleets were falling apart. A communications alert blinked. Another sector. Another strike. Mara didn't need to glance at it. She already knew the outcome. Humans had mastered the art of preemptive terror. Not for spectacle, but for survival, for dominance, for legacy. A young strategist asked hesitantly, "Commander, what do we do when they retaliate in full?" Mara's eyes narrowed. "They won't." The strategist blinked. "Won't? They can't," she said. "We've dismantled their central command, corrupted their logistics, and armed every system they enslaved. Any counterattack will crumble before it even starts. We didn't just strike fleets. We ignited revolutions." The strategist swallowed, realizing the magnitude. "You mean, every system?" "Every system," Mara confirmed. "Every colony, every enslaved population. Humans didn't just fight them. Humans made sure no one else could ever be held under their thumb again." Mara turned from the terminal. The galaxy was responding in real time, but she remained calm, detached. A predator surveying a field of prey, watching how fear rippled faster than any weapon. Her thoughts shifted briefly to the council chamber. Krrthal's laughter had been a mistake, one he wouldn't live to regret. But the lesson extended far beyond him. Every species that had relied on fear, on assumptions, on underestimating humans, was about to learn the same truth. A tactical officer spoke, voice low. "Commander, the human forces on the ground, they're reporting something unusual. Vrak soldiers surrendering, without conflict. Some even aiding our teams." "Expected," Mara said. "Fear is an ally, but desperation is stronger. When they see the inevitability of their defeat, their survival instinct can be harnessed. They become instruments. We don't fight mindlessly. We fight smartly." Outside the viewport, distant stars flickered past. Mara's hand rested lightly on the console. She thought of the countless worlds humans had survived before ever leaving their own solar system. Planets with storms that shredded cities, predators that hunted in packs, environments designed to kill. Deathworlders weren't just survivors. They were natural strategists of the impossible. Another alert flashed. A fleet, cornered near the Anshari Rift, had begun disbanding under the human advance. Mara allowed herself a thin smile. The galaxy was learning. Slowly, painfully, that humans didn't need grand displays of power. They only needed certainty, precision, and a refusal to be underestimated. Her communicator chirped. A voice, familiar, cautious. Commander Vance, your orders? Mara's gaze hardened. Continue. Quietly. Efficiently. Ensure every remaining fleet, every command node, every key officer understands one thing: humans are not to be mocked. They are not to be challenged. They are not to be underestimated. They are inevitability. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. And if anyone forgets, her hand brushed the hilt of her knife. Remind them personally. The officer fell silent. The only sound was the hum of systems and the faint crackle of distant battles. Across the galaxy, the first signs of rebellion, of liberation, began to ripple outward. Mara didn't cheer. She didn't gloat. She simply watched, calm, patient, a human in a galaxy that had never truly known the scope of human determination. And for the first time, somewhere among the stars, the Vrax realized the humans had already won, not with fleets, not with firepower, but with the knowledge that Deathworlders always found a way. The remnants of the Vrax fleet were cornered, scattered like frightened insects. Mara's forces did not chase blindly. Humans never did. They moved like shadows, silent, precise, and unstoppable. Mara watched the tactical projections overlaid across her console, her eyes tracing every maneuver with cold clarity. Commander, a lieutenant reported, voice tight. The last 3 capital ships are consolidating near the Anshari Rift. Shields are at 80%, weapons online. They've fortified a command node on the largest vessel. It's massive. Mara's gaze did not waver. Good. Let them believe they have time. Fear makes mistakes. Confidence breeds carelessness. That's where we strike. The fleet moved silently, small boarding craft flitting between shadows, undetectable until the moment of impact. Mara had not arrived in the fleet for optics. She had arrived because some battles required a human touch, a hand that understood the precision of fear, the exact moment to strike. The Anshari Rift loomed outside the viewport, a swirling chaos of stellar debris and magnetic turbulence. It was a natural trap, perfect for ambush. Mara smiled faintly. Nature is an ally, she muttered. It teaches patience, and it punishes arrogance. The first boarding team infiltrated the largest Vrax dreadnought through maintenance tunnels long abandoned. Mara observed their progress, noting every obstruction, every automated defense neutralized. And then came the breach, silent, surgical. A Vrax general, massive even by his species' standards, turned a corner and froze. Mara's operative stood in the shadow, blade drawn, eyes calm. Before the general could react, his armor's weak joint betrayed him. One precise thrust, and the nerve cluster that controlled motor function was gone. He slumped silently to the floor. The crew panicked, retreating into corridors that humans already controlled. Mara's voice came over the comms, soft but unmistakable. We end things quickly. Fear is irrelevant once certainty exists. On another ship, a human operative moved through the corridors, silent as a ghost. Plasma rifles hummed in the distance, but she carried only a blade. It wasn't the blade that killed, it was the understanding of anatomy, the knowledge of vulnerability, the precision no alien species had ever anticipated. One sweep of the hand, one targeted strike, and officers fell without warning, chaos erupting behind them as systems faltered under human control. Back on Mara's bridge, she studied the holographic feed. The fleet's movements, the panic spreading through the Vrax ranks, the sudden inefficiency that gripped their forces, all of it was a testament to the human approach, economy of force. Commander, a junior officer said, voice trembling. They're beginning to surrender, without engagement. Many are turning their systems over to us voluntarily. Some are even trying to assist. Mara's eyes narrowed. Let them. A fool's compliance is a weapon. They think they choose, they only do what inevitability demands. Their fear, their awe, it's the only language they understand. A sudden alert drew her attention. The command node, central to the Vrax's remaining coordination, had been sealed. Automated defenses activated, a complex web of lasers, turrets, and internal countermeasures. Mara didn't hesitate. Deploy the human operative team, she ordered. No distractions. No mistakes. The node falls intact or it falls at the cost of their best officers. Either outcome serves us. The team advanced, moving through corridors that seemed impossible to traverse, bypassing defenses with methods that would have been inconceivable to any other species. Mara's fingers danced across the console, feeding them real-time adjustments, correcting paths, predicting enemy reactions. Inside the node, the remaining Vrax admirals convened. Vithrael, Krarthail's successor, glared at the tactical displays. They move without noise, without signal. How? Humans, another officer muttered. It makes no sense. They're not machines, not psionics, just humans. Vithrael's claws clenched. Stop them! Stop Mara! Too late. The boarding teams breached the inner sanctum. Vithrael's personal guard met them and fell in seconds, their discipline shredded by tactics they could not anticipate. Mara's blade appeared suddenly at the end of a corridor, silent, inevitable. One twist, one pull, and a century of arrogance ended. The remaining admirals tried to negotiate, but Mara allowed only one word. Enough. By the time the sun rose over the Anshari Rift, the fleet was neutralized. No grand battle. No prolonged siege. Humans had dismantled it, molecule by molecule, officer by officer, until all that remained was surrender and silence. Mara's voice came over the comms again, calm, commanding. Tell your people the galaxy is no longer theirs to command. It's ours to respect, or fear. Reports began filtering in from liberated systems. Freed colonies, previously enslaved populations, began organizing, arming themselves, claiming territory. Mara didn't intervene directly. Humans had sparked revolutions, trained populations to defend themselves, and armed them with knowledge and precision. It was a victory without celebration, a war fought in shadows, but one whose effects would ripple for generations. Her lieutenant approached. Commander, what now? Vithrael is gone. The fleet destroyed. The system liberated. What about the rest? Mara's gaze drifted to the stars. The rest? She said quietly. They will fall in time. The galaxy has been taught a lesson. Not in firepower alone, but in understanding what humans are capable of when underestimated. That lesson is enough. A pause. The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. And the humans on the front lines? They'll continue to move, Mara replied. Quietly. Efficiently. As long as the galaxy remembers what happened here today, humanity will remain the standard others measure themselves against. Fear, yes, but also respect. We do not forget. We do not forgive. We endure, we adapt, and we win. Mara stepped to the viewport, gazing into the void. The stars stretched endlessly, indifferent, silent witnesses to the chaos she orchestrated. Yet she felt no arrogance, no pride. Only resolve. Somewhere, in the shadows of a liberated system, a Vrax soldier whispered to himself, remembering the day he underestimated a human. Remembering the blade, the silence, the inevitability. Remembering Mara Vance. And the galaxy would never forget either. The Anshari Rift had fallen silent. The remaining Vrax forces were scattered, their fleet crippled, their command structure shattered. Yet Mara Vance did not relax. Victory was not a celebration. Victory was inevitability, and inevitability demanded attention until the last threat was extinguished. Reports flooded her console. Systems liberated. Colonies rising. Rebel leaders coordinating. Human strike teams still infiltrating pockets of resistance. Every move, every action, choreographed like a symphony of precision. And through it all, Mara remained at the center, a calm predator surveying the chaos she had engineered. A communications feed blinked urgently. A Vrax admiral, one of the few survivors, dared to transmit. His voice was trembling, metallic rasp strained with disbelief. Human! Vance, You've lost, Mara interrupted smoothly. The galaxy is no longer yours to command. Surrender. Accept it. Or face the consequences of continued defiance. The admiral hesitated. Mara could hear the tremor in his breath. He had watched his fleets collapse silently, his officers fall, his empire crumble without the comfort of a traditional battle. "Do you understand what I am?" she asked softly. "I am not just a human. I am the standard. I am the inevitability. You can fight, scream, plead, but it changes nothing." A pause. Then the Admiral whispered, "You are a Deathworlder." Mara's lips curved faintly. "Yes. And we survive because we adapt, we endure, and we never underestimate the impossible. Remember that." The transmission ended. Mara leaned back, eyes scanning the projections. The galaxy was shifting. Empires that had relied on fear and arrogance were scrambling to adapt to a new reality. Humans had not just fought, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. A lieutenant approached hesitantly. "Commander, with Vithrael and Kaarathale gone, the remaining fleets may attempt guerrilla strikes. How do we respond?" Mara's gaze was cold, unyielding. "We do not chase shadows. We anticipate them. Every fleet, every node, every officer left will either adapt or vanish. Humans do not fight blindly. We fight with foresight, patience, precision. Fear teaches lessons, but inevitability ensures survival." The lieutenant nodded, though unease lingered. Mara's methods were efficient but terrifying, almost inhuman in their logic. And that was exactly the point. Outside the bridge, the liberated colonies began to coordinate. Former slaves, oppressed populations, even neutral systems inspired by humanity's decisive campaign, were arming themselves, learning to organize and defend. Mara did not issue direct orders to them. She did not need to. Humans had shown the galaxy what could be done. That example was enough. Yet even in victory, Mara could not ignore the personal stakes. Kaarathale had been the first, but he was not the last to underestimate her kind. Somewhere, beyond the shattered fleets, others would rise, thinking arrogance could defeat a human. And they would fail. Her hand hovered over the hilt of her blade. She did not need it now. The weapon had served its purpose, an unmistakable symbol of inevitability. But it was always close, always ready. A predator does not discard its claws once the hunt is nearly complete. A final alert drew her attention. One of the last Vrax dreadnoughts had activated an emergency protocol, moving toward a civilian colony. Mara did not hesitate. She selected a strike team, the best, the fastest, the quietest. "Intercept and disable," she ordered. "Do not destroy unless necessary. Make sure the lesson is clear. Human resolve is absolute." Minutes later, the dreadnought was neutralized without casualties. Its command officers were detained. Systems remained intact. And the humans did not fire a single shot in the conventional sense. They had used strategy, fear, and precision to dominate. As Mara surveyed the galaxy in her viewport, a strange calm settled over her. The chaos of combat had ended. The liberation of colonies and the dismantling of fleets had concluded. The survivors, the remnants of what had once been a terrifying empire, would carry the memory of this day for the rest of their lives. A young officer approached. "Commander, with the Vrax subdued, what comes next? Do we expand? Occupy?" Mara shook her head. "No. Humanity does not conquer for the sake of conquest. We intervene when necessary, liberate where possible, and ensure that no one forgets the cost of underestimating us. The galaxy has been taught to respect us. That is enough." She turned from the console and stepped toward the viewport. Stars stretched into infinity, indifferent and eternal. She imagined the world she had saved and those she had forced to remember the futility of arrogance. Somewhere, in the void, former enemies whispered her name in fear, even as the liberated populations whispered it in reverence. Her thoughts flickered briefly to those she had lost along the way, soldiers, civilians, innocents caught in the chaos of empire and rebellion. She did not dwell. Human survival was built on adaptability and the acceptance of sacrifice. Emotion was controlled, channeled, not wasted. A quiet voice came over the comms. "Commander, a message from the liberated colonies. They want to know how they can honor you, how they can continue what you started. Mara's hand rested lightly on her blade. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she let silence stretch, long enough for the weight of her presence to settle across the galaxy. Then she spoke, calm, commanding, and final. Honor humanity by living. Survive. Build. Protect one another. Do not forget what happens when arrogance meets the impossible. And if anyone ever forgets, her eyes flicked to the blade. Remind them. The calm's feed ended. Mara turned from the viewport and walked through the bridge. Her crew followed silently, their respect earned, their fear justified. They knew the legend they had served, one human, Deathworlder, unstoppable, shaping history with precision, not spectacle. In the distance, a message appeared on a screen, an image of her blade, hovering over a map of Vrax space, marking every conquered fleet, every liberated colony. The message was simple. Do not forget the day you underestimated a human. Mara paused, letting the words linger. Not as a threat, not as a boast, but as truth. The galaxy would never be the same. Empires would rebuild, fleets would be reconstructed, leaders would rise, but none would forget. Humans had shown their reach, their cunning, and their inevitability. And Mara Vance, Deathworlder, had done it alone, with nothing but strategy, precision, and the unflinching understanding of survival. She sheathed her blade one final time. The galaxy stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, silent and indifferent. Mara allowed herself a moment of quiet. She had not conquered. She had not ruled. She had ensured that humanity's place in the universe was remembered and respected. And somewhere, deep in the void, enemies whispered her name in fear, while allies whispered it in awe. Mara turned from the stars. There were always more worlds, more threats, more impossible situations where a Deathworlder could teach the galaxy a lesson. And she would be ready. The legend of the Deathworlder had begun.